The wait is finally over. It's time to talk about Heartbreak High Season 2. Hey guys, what's up? It's imuRgency and welcome back to my channel. And today is a monumentous day. We are going to be talking about one of the most highly requested shows and also one of the most popular shows on this channel. That's right. As of right now, Heartbreak High Season 1 has been the second most viewed show review video on this channel. And y'all have been very active at letting me know that Season 2 of Heartbreak High has come out. And I am late. I will admit that. Has almost 2 weeks gone by since the show has come out? Yes. But I could explain, I was at Coachella the other weekend, and then I'm out of town this weekend. Like, it got busy and I wanted to take my time watching this season because I missed it, I really did. But what matters now is that we're here, and it's time to talk about Heartbreak High Season 2. So let's run this video up, shall we? Does it even really need introduction? Like, subscribe, share, follow me on my socials at imuRgency on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And click the join button if you want to become a channel member and get early access to videos like this and 2 exclusive show review videos a month. But let's talk about the season of Heartbreak High, shall we? This season was insane. Like, I have no other way to describe it besides just completely off the walls in some of the best ways. Now, I was really nervous going into the season simply because I had heard mixed things about this season from you all. I heard some saying that this season was even better than Season 1. I heard some saying that this season was especially boring and that they hated it. And I was scared because Season 1 was so great and both of these responses were like very polarizing. So I was like, which one is it going to be? And I can thoroughly say after watching this season, it is definitely one of these two things, and I will let you know exactly which one it is at the end of this video. So ooh, that means you have to stay tuned, friend. But before we do that, let's talk about the general things that were good about this season. For one, I feel like they really continue to have this theme of being very good, or some of the best Gen Z representation we've seen in media as of lately. And I feel like the dialogue overall, moving from Season 1 to Season 2, has been refined a lot. I stated in many videos that the dialogue in Season 1 was really good, and I really enjoyed how well it captured the Gen Z-ness. But what I really liked about Season 2 is that they sort of dialed it down a bit to be less so every single line being like a one-liner, to making the dialogue as a whole just seem more current, while also including those pop culture references, memes, and general Gen Z sentiments that make it feel like this was a show written by and for Gen Z, even if it necessarily wasn't. And something that I noticed a lot this season, I'm not sure if it was as prevalent in last season, was the increased usage of Aussie slang, because it got to the point where I was starting to clock it. I was like, oh, I want to know what's probo. Who's a probo? I want to go to the gather. Like, the Australian urge to shorten a word and add O at the end of it was going very strong for me after watching this season. Just to the point where I was able to notice it and clock it and be like, oh, I see what's going on here. I see what y'all are talking about. I don't know exactly what y'all are talking about because at some points it does sound a little different to me, but with context clues, I can get it, and regardless, I appreciate. Next thing I definitely enjoyed was the fashion. And I feel like the fashion also got an upgrade this season. I don't know if y'all noticed, but the girls, gender neutral, were stepping this season. Like, the fashion feels so current, but also not like super outdated. Because as we've talked about in this channel, our generation tends to go through micro trends and cycle through aesthetics very quickly, meaning that shows and media that try and portray Gen Z by trying to capture our fashion sense will become dated very quickly, because as micro trends move on, every couple of weeks to months, those projects that use those pieces of clothing won't age very well. But I feel like with wardrobe for this season, yes, it is still very on the nose for like Gen Z clothing around that age group, but they're also just more so timeless pieces, and more so pieces that could be generally applied to multiple years of Gen Z's fashion. Like, some characters that have outfits that stand out to me are, for one, Malachi's sweaters. Just Malachi's whole wardrobe was just so, like, his whole wardrobe really did define his character of being like kind of not really the most confident with himself, still trying to discover himself, because most of the time he did wear these baggy sweaters that were really cute, or he'd be in like sports gear. So like, as someone who's new to the queer scene, he does still tend to dress more heteronormative, if that makes sense, but also kind of elevated because he be stepping. Another one, of course, is Darren. And Darren this season was dripped down. I don't know if y'all noticed. I don't know if y'all clocked. I don't know what's going on in Darren's life, but I think their parents might be rich, because the things that Darren was wearing are not cheap. Okay, like, I think at one point they were wearing like a Diesel crop top, and I don't know how much y'all know about Diesel, but Diesel ain't cheap, okay? But Darren was honestly eating pretty much all of their outfits. Amory too. Amory's outfits were so cute. Like, one that stood out to me was she was wearing like this denim corset dress thing with like a cropped white long sleeve colored shirt on top of it. That just did it for me. I don't know what it was. That just really did it for me. I love that for her. But the fashion was eating. And next and final highlight that I want to mention before we get into the plot and characters was the score of this season. The score of this season, the music of this season was so great. Although I will say there were some points where I was kind of jarred because the music was so current. I was like, ooh, what y'all know about this? Like there was one point where Cash was having a very serious conversation with Chook. Like they were stuck on a boat and they were like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? I can't believe this. Like we're stranded. Then all of a sudden Ice Spice comes on. And it's like, she a bad, she's showing her panty. She shake it like that was really funny to me. I know it was intentionally put that way to be funny, but like that got me real bad. Like the licensing budget for this season must be insane because they had a lot of very current songs that are still relevant right now, which I feel like we don't get a lot of nowadays. Like either it's really bad Netflix music that you see on like the reality shows or just random music that you've never heard of, but like Heartbreak High this season had some bops and I love that for them. But with that aside, let's talk about characters and let's talk about what this season was all about. This season was a big departure, although fundamentally kind of similar from season 1, whereas in season 1 Amory's trying to figure out why Harper doesn't like her and clear her name from being Matt. Season 2, Amory's trying to save her reputation and her relationships around her by trying to prove to people that she's a good person while also fighting the allegations of being a pit. And that's one thing, I don't know if that's an Australian thing, you Aussies can let me know, but the people on this show love a vulgar nickname. Like who looks at her, looks at this really nice girl, looks at this beautiful girl Amory and thinks, pit. Yeah, like that's just wild to me. And this season doesn't fail to deliver with the plot. Like season 1, the vibes are pretty light and pretty coming of age like you would expect for any high school age show. But then like in season 1, season 2 finds itself taking a darker turn towards the end. And as I was watching this, it really did. I know I said this in the last video, but it needs to be repeated because I see it so much now. But Heartbreak High, especially this season, is such a perfect blend between sex ed and euphoria, but Australian because like a lot of the concepts, a lot of the humor, and a lot of like the raunchiness of the show is very akin to that of sex ed, while the really mature topics and the substance usage that we see, especially in this season, is very reminiscent to that of a Euphoria. And for a lot of people, we love both of these shows, so combining them together and giving them a little R&R, Clear flair really does just do it for a lot of us. And that's just real on real. But yeah, getting back to Amory. Amory is going through it this season. Like she cannot get a break because she keeps finding herself in situation after situation, trying desperately to beat the most hated allegations, but is failing at every turn. Like the girlies just really don't like Amory, and they have decent reason to. And I'm not sure if I said this in the last video, but I wanted to make a tweet about this because I really wanted to know, out of their own respected shows, who is more self-destructive, Amory on Heartbreak High or Davey from Never Have I Ever, because they are both very self-destructive characters that I wonder like if they went to the same school, if they would be best friends or mortal enemies. Like I really would want to know. But Amory's whole thing this season is that she's caught up in a very interesting love triangle between Malachi and this new boy Rowan. And honestly, that's iconic for her because they're both bi, so she's in a bi love triangle, except it's not cute because one of them is actually a stalker, and we'll get into that. Like I said, Amory can't get a break, and that's not even mentioning the fact that she, spoiler alert, gets pregnant by one of them. That was very wild. And I will say I do like how they covered that episode where Amory is getting a because I feel like a lot of times how those are depicted in shows generally makes them seem like, oh, you just head to the clinic, you pick up your thing, and that's it, and you're always good, baby gone. But Heartbreak High actually shows the realities of what it's like to go through that. Like the pain, the fear, and the maintenance that goes into having an and I also like how they didn't go the typical like guilt route, like, oh my god, should I keep the baby? Is this morally wrong? Like, what should I do? Like, they're like, no, I tried to reach out to homeboy, he didn't want to respond, so I'm gonna kill it. Ugh. And I love that for them because I feel like oftentimes when it goes into that whole moral panic route, it's kind of sending a weird message over you should feel bad or you should feel guilty about making that choice for yourself, when in reality it's just a choice that you're making for your sake and for your future's sake. So really, if you know what you want and you have that made up in your mind, you shouldn't shame yourself for that. But now let's talk about Heartbreak. Harper. Harper, honestly, for me this season was kind of just there. Like, I'm glad she was more involved in the season than last season, because last season she was kind of just like moody up until the end where we figured out why she was moody. Now we get more character development over how she's dealing with everything in the beginning of this season, but I want to say during like the midpoint of this season, she kind of just takes a back burner to all the other characters' problems, and she's kind of just like there, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because I feel like this season gives a lot of other characters a lot of time to shine, but it's just like, damn, you had your episodes and that was kind of it. But I love her self-discovery that she has this season, and I literally just finished watching the finale. When I tell you I finished that episode, wrote down some notes, and ran over here to this camera within like 30 minutes, yes, this is still very fresh in my mind. But for the finale, Harper's hair ate down. The little I don't know what those are called. Her little pincer edges. I don't know who was her hairstylist, but they had her laid. Literally no notes, looks so good. I'm also glad that she didn't necessarily fall for Ant, and she kind of did her own thing this season. Even at the very end, like, it's still left kind of ambiguous whether or not they're actually pursuing something or if they're just friendly with each other. And I kind of love that for her, like, figure out your own stuff first before diving into something new. But then we have Darren, and Darren's character this season was actually wild. Darren is still the icon and the funniest person on this show. Like, Darren's actor James is such an amazing talent. Like, they can really act down, whether it be for the more funny stuff or the emotional stuff. They just have the range to do it all. In that, there was a lot that was going on for Darren this season. Darren was trying to explore what it's like to date, actually, and have a formal relationship in someone like Cash, who starts off the season in the clink. Like, Darren is holding Cash down. Like, no love after lockup. Like, they don't play about each other because they've lasted through prison, which is crazy. But even after that, we see them go through issues in their relationship with Cash, figuring out whether or not they can trust him, because Cash is still dealing with the Eshes and his own past and his own insecurities to figure out what they're gonna do. And it's kind of sad at the very end when we find out that Darren and Cash end up breaking up to figure out who they really are separated from each other, and to hopefully find someone that is a better fit. And again, love Darren down, one of my favorite characters on this show. Their outfits always eat, their one-liners always eat, and honestly, one of the best characters on the show, if not the best character on the show. So shout out to Darren. Next, we have Malachi, our tortured king. Ooh, no one loves going through angst and suffering like our boy Malachi. And Malachi is everybody's sweetheart, our bushy eyebrowed king. Like, I don't care if he's in the wrong, he can do no wrong in my eyes. And that's just that on that, okay? Like, I feel so bad for him because he consistently takes L after L after L this season. And honestly, this series, like, last season was not too great for him either. But this season, not that it was worse, but it was also very not good. On the bright side, he's able to come out as bi and become more comfortable in himself after the events of last season. We get confirmation that yes, he also does happen to like the peen. Shout out to him. But in that, he gets himself in said love triangle where his new love interest, Rowan, who then becomes his ex, starts hooking up and dating his other ex, who also is the love of his life, in Amory, and he catches them hooking up. So both of his exes end up linking up, and everyone around him kind of just doesn't care for him, doesn't necessarily want him there, and doesn't necessarily treat him like he is valued and loved, except for Missy. So homeboy ends up dipping. Like, he ends up leaving to Switzerland, which is so wild, and the circumstances surrounding that are even sadder. Like, I'm sorry, King. I'm so sorry all of that happened. You're also in the wrong because he had a habit of blowing up at people at the wrong time when they needed to tell him something actually important. But you know, you can't win them all, but still, like, dang girl, like, you keep getting beat left and right. Like, I just want to give him a hug. I just want to give Malachi a hug. Next up is Quinny, and Quinny gets a lot of interesting representation in development this season. Quinny's whole character arc is that she tries to unmask for one of the first times, at least on this show, completely, and fully just be who she is after she gets into a fight with Darren and friends. And in that, she kind of ends up distancing herself from a lot of her friends, where she later admits to having that not necessarily feel the best, because while yes, she was able to not have to mask all the time, she was also starting to get stressed because she was losing her connection with her friends and losing a general sense of who she is as a person, whether that be masked or unmasked, which I feel like is huge and not something that has really ever been acknowledged on mainstream TV like that before when it comes to being autistic and being on the spectrum. So that was really interesting to see, and I love that that was included. Quinny also ended up winning the election, which I loved for her. Like, she is going to be such a big boss, and the fact that she was able to save both Amory and Harper in the end, like, Quinny's an icon. How could you hate Quinny? Next character we're talking about is Missy, and I loved Missy this season. She got so much screen time and so much development where I feel like in season 1 I didn't really get a sense for her character as much. Season 2, she is an it girl. Like, she get money, her body tea, she's super thick, super pretty. Like, Missy is an it girl, and honestly so fab. Like, that one scene of her working out while chewing on a pork leg, like, that was iconic. And I feel like she also had a lot of iconic dialogue, and we really got to learn more of who she is and also how she is as a partner, because shocker, she ends up falling for Spider. Yeah, I know. Oh, I didn't like that either. She ends up falling for a Spider, and they have this whole will they, won't they, but eventually they will, and she's like, oh girl, why Spider? Why Spider? Why is Spider still a main character in 2024? But Missy, I loved you. Sherry, her actor, love you too, such an amazing talent. I'm excited to see more of her in season 3 because she really was a highlight for me. So shout out to Miss Missy, tuh. And next, since I mentioned him, Spider, I personally did not need more Spider in season 2. And that's just my take. Like, in season 1, I wasn't the biggest fan. Season 2 made me even less of a fan because he spent so much of the season being a terrible person, and then he got his whole redemption arc being like, he's not really a dick, he's not really an awful person, his mom is just really bad to him and he is rebelling against her, so he's deciding to be an awful person. Which, okay, understandable, I guess, but then, like, you know, that's just how I felt at the end. Like, it still didn't really give that you meant what you were saying, because the second he got rejected, he became all bad boy again, and then he was like, you know what, never mind, I'll be good for you, Missy. It's like, I don't know what to believe. I really don't. I don't know what to believe with him, so I won't. And him leading the whole Sea Lords thing was just so, ooh. And that whole plot line was very interesting from like an analytical point of view, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but just generally like, ew. Next is Sasha, and Sasha also got a bigger role this season, being one of the candidates, and we got to see more of Sasha's personality, and she's really funny. Shout out to Gemma, her actor, but Sasha this season was really just comedy for me. She was trying to foil and thwart Amory every chance that she got, and she was just generally a very funny character. Kind of annoying, and yeah, shout out to Sasha. Next is Cash, and I don't have a ton to say about Cash outside of the fact that he was also going through with this entire season, trying to figure out how to get out of the SJs, how to get out of jail. And while he says that he's done now, I don't believe that will last for too long. One of the highlights of his character was when he was out doing his own thing. I think he might have been on drugs, and he was doing that little dance out in the park with that random man. That was funny, love that. But when he went to go confront Dusty about his man, he kind of did something there. I was like, ooh, you better come get the facts on your man. Get a little crazy for your man, okay? Yay. But other than that, I'm just kind of sad that him and Darren broke up. Although I do think it's the best for both of them right now to figure out who they are and how they can reconnect. So yeah, we talked about characters for a while. Now let's talk about some of the themes of this season and some of the messages that I feel like this show is trying to convey with this season. One of the major plot lines behind this season was that the SLT program that we've known in season 1 has some competition in the newly founded Sea Lords, which is essentially the more misogynistic and like red pill counter organization that's focused on just men and making them reclaim their masculinity and manliness, and it's as bad as you think it is. And I think that that's a commentary on the pipeline that we see a lot in real life for young men, because this club was founded by a bitter older man who is likely an incel, who feels slighted because his dad, who he revered as a good upstanding person who in reality was a terrible human being, got fired and pulled out because of his misbehavior, and used that to champion his messaging of like men, specifically white men, are constantly villainized and are the actual victims of like woke culture because they actually have to be accountable for their actions for once, which I feel like is an actual real life talking point for a lot of people. I've seen it in my comments before when I talk about things of this nature, being like, oh, everyone just loves to hate on men, and like white men are like the most suppressed group right now, which like, no. But I feel like the dialogue behind the messaging of like the whole villainizing men to actually make them villains is sort of interesting, because I feel like with all things there is some nuance in that. Like specifically Spider's story and his relationship of his mom essentially projecting these negative thoughts and perceptions of her own son onto him and how that could possibly impact him, while also providing commentary on how easy it is for young men to go down the sort of red pill misogynistic pipeline, where it can go from, hey, sometimes I feel like I'm generalized and lumped into this category of like bad men when I have necessarily not done anything wrong, to essentially just becoming a woman hater, because that's a real pipeline that people go through in real life. Like that's a thing. Like things that start off as innocent, like self-improvement, becoming more in touch with your masculinity, and dealing with mental health in like certain ways, can eventually lead young men down the pipeline of becoming all the forms of phobics and misogynistic. Like there are whole videos on this topic. It's such a real thing, and I'm glad that they brought it up and talked about it in this, because I feel like that is such a Gen Z thing that is going on because of the nature of youth, masculinity, and the internet that are all intersecting right now. Like the path to being an incel is more accessible than ever for a lot of young men, which is really sad, because like just don't. And then on the other side, the show also provides critique towards like performative activism, being down for every single cause, but superficially. Like a lot of things that are going on with Sasha's character, where she'd be so caught up on like being on the moral high ground that fundamentally she didn't really connect with anybody or really believe a lot of things that she was saying, and we're just saying it and promoting it to be sort of holier than thou. So it's interesting seeing how both sides were kind of depicted. But now let's talk about the finale. The finale episode was a lot. And it was honestly so sad. Like it made me really emotional, because we find out for real that Rowan was the actual bad guy, although I could have probably told you that from the second that he appeared, and the bird cycle happened to appear the same day that he appeared. I put the pieces together pretty early, but it finally becomes public knowledge that he's the bad guy. And one thing I didn't know was how deep and dark that he actually got. Like learning more about his story and why he is the way he is kind of made me feel, not that any of it was justified, but making it feel even less so justified. Like he really just does give Stalker with a lot of trauma, to the point where it's kind of scary. Like he is seeing his own deceased younger brother and has been stalking and harassing Amory for actual months at this point, because he's under the assumption that Amory unalived his younger brother, when that's just not the case. Like that was just wild to me, and the way that he was talking to Malachi and scaring Malachi off in that episode was even more so wild. Like it was starting to give serial killer. Like it really got unhinged for a second. I was like, ooh, what's going on there? What is going on there? And I'm happy that she did, but I also can't believe that Amory ended up saving Rowan from the fire, because it's just like, dang, like where do you go from here? Because that man needs to be evaluated, because he's going through a lot psychologically. Tried to kill both Amory and Harper. They just kind of let that go. Was harassing and almost distributed CP of Amory. They just let that go. Like that man is a menace, and they did not go as hard on him as they should have. They actually went harder on Dusty, kicking him out of the school, than they did for this man. Of course, we don't know what his punishment is going to end up being, because they're likely leaving that for season 3, but it's like, dang, you know? Then the whole stuff with Malachi is really sad, because Malachi was trying to give Amory that one note, expressing all his feelings before he hopped on that plane and left. But now she'll never get to know what he said, because the note burned up with the rest of the school, and that was really sad for me, because I'm like, dang, she'll never know his true feelings. I mean, until he lands and she can call him, because you know it's like the 21st century and they can call each other, but still it's like, dang, it's really sad. Spider and Missy are together. JoJo's been promoted, she's now an elite employee, and she's expanding her curriculum to be more inclusive, which I'll be interested to see. And overall, I feel like this season ended off in a good place. Like, I honestly think if they wanted to, not saying that they should, season 3 needs to be coming. Season 3 definitely needs to be coming, because I need to see those kids graduate. But they left it off in a place where they could technically end the season, end the series, and it wouldn't be necessarily out of place. Like they tied up a lot of knots, or at least tied them up enough, you know, where I don't have too many questions. Like the only questions that I have in predictions for season 3 are, for one, what's going to happen to Rowan now? 2, will Malachi be coming back? 3, will Dusty be coming back? And 4, how do they all move forward from this? Because I feel like they didn't really set up a whole lot for season 3. I feel like last season they kind of set up a little bit more, being like, oh, these sort of things are going to happen. But they didn't do that so much this season, which made me be like, oh, is this the last one? But no, not manifesting that there's going to be a season 3. We're manifesting here. There's going to be a season 3 because we need more of this content. And I need to know more of like what's going to happen between Cash and Darren. But yeah, if you couldn't tell already, I really enjoyed this season. It was a really great season, yo. I don't know what people were saying when they're like, oh my god, this season was so trash. It was so funny. It was so entertaining, and I feel like it really built on the foundation of season 1. Like episode 4 was just so entertaining. So entertaining. The camping episode, too good. Comedy gold. And I really can't give this show anything less than a 9 out of 10. Like, I love this season and I love this show. I can't wait to see more from it. But now I want to hear from you. What did you think about Heartbreak High season 2? Were you excited to watch? Did you have a good time watching, or was it not your favorite like some people have been saying? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, if you're new to the channel, then definitely subscribe, leave a like on this video because it helps out a ton with the YouTube algorithm. Follow me on my socials, imuRgency, on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And other than that, y'all, I have an emergency, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.